Hello, welcome to the Bridge project. Okay, this project has been created to bring together conscientiology researchers from all over the world in order to facilitate knowledge exchange and sharing of interassistantial experiences. This is a free online and is held every first Sunday of the month, where the speaker presents a topic of self-research. Okay, so well, we are here with ISIC. For somebody that's new, okay, let's present ourselves. ISIC is Interassistantial Service for the Internationalization of Conscientiology. It's a non-profit organization run by volunteers formerly within the ICC, International Conscientiological Cosmoetic Community. ISIC has the status of pre-conscientiocentric institution, and you have the following motto, okay? Opening doors and building bridges. Idea here is to connect people all over the world. And then as part of the bridge researchers, we are going to have today Lygia Decker, okay? She is going to be our presenter, okay? And then Lygia, you welcome, Lygia.
Thank you, Marcelo.
And Lygia, she is a veterinarian. She holds a PhD in tropical veterinary medicine, and currently she is a retired university professor. She is a penta practitioner, member of the Invisible College of Pentology. She's a verbophotographer of the Encyclopedia of Conscientiology, and also an instructor of Conscientiology and a volunteer of ISIC. Okay, it's a good colleague that we have with us today. Okay, so Lygia, welcome to the Bridge Researchers.
Thank you, Marcelo, very much. It's a pleasure to be here. So good afternoon, good evening, and maybe good morning for some of you, depending on your proxemic and chronemic. So it's a pleasure for me to be here today and to have this opportunity to talk a bit about this research. So we are going to start. The next, please, Marcelo. We always start with the principle of disbelief. So everything you hear here, don't believe in the first place. We ask you to experiment and to have your own experiences. And together with this principle, I always like also to bring, the next please, to bring the consensual paradigm. So just to remind you that we are here talking about these 7 pillars, which is the holosomatics. We consider that we have more than this physical body, this soma. We are talking about bioenergies, including immanent and consensual energies and parapsyches. We are talking about multidimensionality, so we are going beyond this intraphysical dimension. We talk about seriality, so we consider that we have a multi-existential cycle of several lives. And the 3 last ones are very important, which is about cosmoethics, about the values, principles, and our intentionality. Universalism, to be open and to have this sense of mega fraternity. And the last one is self-experimentation. In other words, I'm going to open a bit my LabCon, my personal laboratory here, my interconsensual laboratory, to share some ideas here with you. Next, please. So let's start with the motivation to start this research. So I accessed the Conscientiology in August 2017, when I was living in Germany. I started nearly immediately volunteering. I started with translation of books. I started Penta. Penta is the personal energetic task, which is an interassistantial task we perform. And I started writing, because writing is something I was practicing during my academic life. So I did write some verbets for the encyclopedia, articles, and also suddenly I saw myself started this CEAEC self-research, which was nearly spontaneously. So after that, I went to Aracê campus. Next, please. Yeah. Before that, I accessed one verbete from Valdo Vieira, which is the number 888, called localization. And this verbete touched me very much because he talked a lot about the place we are and what we are doing, and the location, how important these connections are. And after that, I went to Aracê, and then I made this Serenarium, which is a laboratory, a very immersion laboratory for 72 hours, 3 days. And during these experiments, I came with this idea about writing a book about proxemics and chronemics, but I had things in a loose way. I did not know exactly where to start from. So I placed together many things. Marcelo? Yeah, so I was trying to understand the connection between all these things. So the first book I translated was the Intermissive Course, this book from Tatiana Mota. And I was asking myself, how can I understand all this process? Things have been very fast with me, and I was really facing this paradigm transition. I like more transition than shift because we actually are in a dynamic process. So I was trying to understand all these concepts, and it was like, well, I have to stop and to start searching the origin of all this and to understand where I was and who I am, actually. So this was the reason I started this research. And at the beginning, I thought, well, I felt like I was alone. I had not many people to talk about. I was in Germany, and I really was a bit confused about my connections. So, but once I started this research, I immediately understood that we are not alone. Next, please. Yeah. So we are not alone, and we have never been alone. So the research, I understood that I had to search for these connections and for these interactions we have along the time, along several lives, actually, not just this life. So the idea here is to bring these hypothetical proxemic and chronemic frameworks of an intermissivist. So I will talk a bit about intermissivist in the next slides, but the idea here is to have this, to identify these pockets of holothoscenes I'm connected to along many, many lives, not just this one. So my objective here is to bring an ongoing research. So it's not finished. Actually, I'm just starting. And my objective is to share with you some hypotheses, some reflections about these proxemics and chronemics aspects of these realities, these multidimensional realities experienced by intermissivists. And when I say intermissivists, I'm referring to ex-students of this called intermissive course, but also the ones currently attending an intermissive course. So the method I used, the methodology, was the publications, not just from Valdo Vieira, but also from intermissivists, from colleagues, intermissivists. So articles and discussions during these conscientiological tertulias and other meetings. So I'm trying to compile as much as possible information about these realities experienced by intermissivists. So the outline for this presentation, I will start with some definitions, and then I will talk a bit about the intermissive course, and then I will bring a hypothetical chronological timeline, and then we are going to discuss about the strong traits of intermissivists and a bit of my self-research. And at the end, I hope we have some time for a debate, okay? So there is me as a guinea pig. I will place myself here as a guinea pig. Next. So let's start with the definitions. First of all, proxemics. What is proxemics? It's actually not a neologism. This is not from Conscientiology. This concept was coined by Edward Hall in the 60s. And he says that proxemics is the interrelated observations and theories of human use of space as a specialized elaboration of culture. And then, the next. He brings this idea about the distance between people and these concepts, the intimate relationships in a closer position, less than 50 centimeters, up to the public, which is more than 4 meters. So this is a view about proxemics from the intraphysical dimension, let's say. But now I bring another concept. Valdo Vieira brings in the Homo sapiens reurbanizatus, and he says that proxemics is the study of physical and extra-physical distance established by people, whether spontaneously or determined by social and parasocial interactions. So, and he says something very interesting. The proximity of conscience to each other makes it easier to do business more directly. So it's all about this. It's the interaction between people. And proxemics actually comes from proximity, the English word. Next, please. And if we think about a more broader perspective in terms of evolutionology, we can say that proxemics can be defined as the science studying the distances and proximity of people, things, phenomena, or any researched reality, and consequently the territorial space where the consciousness fixates temporarily, concentrate, or centralize the megafocus, or the locus of their faculties and attributes at a given evolutionary moment. So I made an adaptation of this definition from this verbate localization, where Valdo Vieira defines localization as such, okay? So in other words, we can say that proxemics involves at least 3 fundamental areas: space, distance, and territory. So let's see now about chronemics. So what's chronemics? Also, chronemic is a word very used in science, in common science. And the definition is the study of both subjective and objective human tempos as they influence and are interdependent with human behavior and communication. So this is like a non-verbal communication affecting the behavior of people. And again, from the intraphysical dimension, we can say that this is related to time. So the time affecting the interaction between people or the communication between people. And this was a concept from Thomas Brunner in the 80s. But if we bring it to a more conscientiological definition, we can say that chronemics is the communicative function of the study of time in social and parasocial interactions, or the way people perceive, structure, and value time in their interrelationships. So it's a very relative concept, but it has to do with the time. And again, if we amplify this to an evolutionary perspective, we can define chronemics as the relationship between time and the resolution of demands, including the rhythm of self-achievements, aiming at self and heteroevolution under a praxeological point of view. In other words, everyone has his own time, his own rhythm, and we could illustrate a chronemic picture by our many lives. So we have periods in which we are here at the intraphysical dimension as human beings, as conscients, and we have periods at the extraphysicality. So we say that this is an intermission, an extraphysical period. And this is what we are going to explore a bit more in the next slides. So when I started thinking about proxemics and chronemics, I thought, well, I should look at the encyclopedia, because this binomial, making the combination or the association between these two concepts, this binomial has been cited in more than 200 entries of the encyclopedia. But I could not find the verbiage about the binomial, so I did write it last year, and I defined this binomial as the study of the approximate or contiguous manifestation between space, location or physical distance, proxemics, and time, period or era, chronemics, among people, things, or phenomena of any reality researched within the context of consensual evolution. So when I started studying this, I realized that everything we do is related to this binomial. Everything we do has this interaction between space and time, right? So let's see how can we advance a bit about this concept of proxemics and chronemics, and we are going to start by defining the intermissive course, because I mentioned at the beginning that the idea here is to talk about these aspects of an intermissivist. So what is an intermissive course? Here I did bring this definition from the book, from Tatiana Motta, and she defines it as an advanced extraphysical educational model composed of disciplines from the most diverse areas. And she also says that this course is didactically organized according to the students' needs and are delivered in the period of intermission between two lives. And the purpose of this intermissive course is to clarify the multidimensional reality of a consciousness and to apply technical tools for evolutionary acceleration. And the aim is to ground this work for the next life. So it's very interesting to see this, the purpose to clarify this multidimensional reality and the technical tools. So the intermissive course is like a technical resource to improve or to facilitate the next intraphysical life. Next, please. Walter Vieira has also an entry in the encyclopedia called Intermissive Course, and I recommend you, those who can read in Portuguese, to start this verbatim because it's really interesting. And he defines it as a set of disciplines and thematic experiences administered to consciences after a certain evolutionary level during the consensual intermission, within its cycle of personal multi-existences, aiming at the consensual completism of their proexis in the next intraphysical life. So here he calls our attention to the question of proexis, to the completism of proexis. So we can say that from an evolutionary perspective, the intermissive course aims to boost personal and group consensual evolution. And we think about, when we talk about group consensual evolution, we think about realbacks, the extra-physical reurbanization. You will find definitions from Valdo Vieira, but I did bring here one definition we have in the glossary of essential conscientiological terms, which is a very good publication, a glossary Portuguese-English. And the definition of realbacks is the improvement of unhealthy extra-physical communities and environments, anti-cosmoetically degraded, in order to sanitize intraphysical holotoscenes of areas of the interphysical society over which there are anti-evolutionary deleterious influences on human evolution. So this is a movement starting like hygiene of extra-physical environments affecting environments here at our intraphysical dimension. So the intermissive course is actually a resource to help, to accelerate, or to potentialize the realbacks, the extra-physical reurbanization. So here I will bring a chronological timeline, but in a very summarized way. Okay, we could have here many aspects of this timeline, but I will try to bring the most important information in terms of publication of treatises from Valdo Vieira and meetings or events involving intermissivists, okay? So we start with the year 1100, when Valdo Vieira said that he became aware extraphysically about this mega project of realbacks. Then he jumps much later to 1651, and he says about this first organization of intermissive courses based or as a consequence of intraphysical scientific neo-paradigms. This is when we had the scientific revolution and we had more or better conditions to start thinking about these intermissive courses. Then we had a period from 1700 until 1945, when he says that this was a time of a crescendo of extraphysical rescues and invitation of potential intermissivists. And he calls this like a pilot intermissive courses. So during this time, we had the first resoma of intermissivists. And of course, we are talking about here the group related to Valdo Vieira at this time as a consciex Zephyrus. This is the para-identity of Valdo Vieira. But in 1932, he left the intermissive course and the extraphysical work and resomated in Minas Gerais, Brazil, in Monte Carmelo. And he says that between 1945 and 1950, we had a period of more specialization or professionalization of intermissive courses and an intensification of this process of reurbanization. This was especially after the end of the Second World War. So before I go ahead, I forgot to mention, Marcelo, if we have any questions or any comments, you can always interrupt me before the time for debate, okay? So feel free to bring your questions or comments.
No worries, Lygia. Okay, go on with the presentation. At any moment, I may interrupt you for any questions. Okay.
Thank you. So, based on this timeline, we can hypothesize that between the 50s and the 60s, we had the first generation of intermissivists involved with the max proexis. So we call them max proexist intermissivists. And this, well, I'm included in this era or time because I was born in 1959. So it makes sense to think that this first generation of intermissivists were predominantly recycling conscience. In other words, using the technique of existential recycling technique. In 66, Vieira moves to Rio de Janeiro, and he left the movement of Spiritism. And he says that between 68 and 85, we had a temporarily extra-physical community called Pandeiro in the coast of Brazil, near Rio de Janeiro. And it's interesting that he mentions that this community was like a postscript of the intermissive courses and a preface to Conscientiology. So in this community, some consciexes have been there attending or making experiences and learning things, and also projected conscience, like Valdo Vieira himself. And so this was a temporary community. It stopped in 85. And then we have between 70 and 80, the second generation of maxi-proexist intermissivists. And the hypothesis here is that this generation is predominantly the inverter conscience, or consciousness able to apply the technique of invexis, existential inversion.
So, Lygia, let me bring one question that people may have.
Okay.
Well, we see a big delay in talking about chronemic between the birth of Valdo Vieira in 1935 and then these two generations of intermissivists coming up. Okay, it was a long time to wait for the group. Okay, can you expand a little bit this idea and the reasons why we have this kind of time gap between Valdo Vieira's birth and the birth of these two generations?
Yes, well, according to him, I say that because he mentioned about this, not only in this verbet localization, but also in other tertulias. He had many things to do. He was in charge of many projects before he actually could bring the idea of conscientiology. I guess that many consciousness from this group of intermissivists, they had things to be solved at the extra-physical dimension, for example. So they had to delay a bit this resoma. And Valdo Vieira had this trajectory together with other people in this movement called Spiritism until 66. And of course, he had to plan his proexis. He had to attend university. He graduated as a medical doctor, and then as an odontologist. And he had to save money and to create all the conditions to be, let's say, autonomous to really start the project. But we are going to talk about this from now on. But it's good, this question, because it reminds me about one point Valdo Vieira commented also in this tertulia from the verbet localization. He says that normally we have a time at the extra-physical dimension between 12 and 15 years. This is the average, let's say. But some people need to stay longer. Some people need to stay for 30 years or for 40 years or even longer. And even Valdo Vieira, he spent more than 200 years at the extra-physical dimension. So this is very particular for each consciousness, okay? And of course, there are some rhizoma which are really necessary for that moment. For example, if someone decimates and suddenly there is a group here related to this consciousness, and this situation is optimized for certain kind of recomposition or certain types of work, and the consciousness has to resonate nearly immediately after the soma. So this is very variable. But he said that he had to wait 2 or 3 generations of intermissivists to really consolidate conscientiology.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's go ahead. And in 91, he created the Center of Continuous Consciousness in Rio. And here is an important date, because he published this book, Projections of the Consciousness. This book was translated into English only in 2016, and it's available for those who want to read it. So this is a kind of diary in which Valdo Vieira brings many experiences of lucid projections. It's really interesting. So later, he published the first treatise, which is Projectiology. So the first edition was in 86. So you see, he had to wait. He spent 19 years writing this book, and it was translated into English in 2002. Later, in 2016, we had the second edition. Let's go ahead. In 88, he created the International Institute of Projectiology. He said that it was an inspiration from the Serenissimus Monja. This was in Rio. Then in 92 was the creation of the GreenVex, the first group of inverters consciousness. And in 94, the 700 Conscientiology experiments, which was translated only in 2016 into English. So you see, there was a gap and a preparation. It was like a crescendo. First, he brings projectiology, and then he brings the conscientiology as a science. And in 95, there is another important date, which was the creation of the CEAEC, the Center for High Studies of Conscientiology, here in Foz do Iguaçu. And 2002 was the beginning of the conscientiological tertulias, at the beginning at a very small room called Green Saloon. In 2004, he published the Homo sapiens Reurbanizatus, and then 2007, Homo sapiens Pacificus. These 2 treatises have not been translated yet. We hope we can have it in the next years. And 2008 was the opening of the Tertuliarium and the beginning of these online real-time tertulias. So it was really an important date. And now talking about the meetings of intermissivists. We had the first one in 2011 in Foz do Iguaçu, and then 2013, the second one, also here in Foz do Iguaçu. And 2014 was the year he published the Dictionary of Arguments of Conscientiology, and the last publication he made was Lexicon of Orthopensatas. These 2 are also not yet translated into English. And 2015, we had the 3rd International Congress of Intermissivists here in Foz do Iguaçu, and it was the year after the soma of Valdo Vieira. After that, we had an important meeting in 2018 in Strasbourg. Was the first intermissivist meeting, And this was really an important event, because Strasbourg is the place we have the European Parliament, and it was really a good meeting, gathering many, more than 200 intermissivists. So it was very important for the intermissivists to have this meeting in Europe. So we came to 2020, and of course, we had an important shock with the COVID-19, the pandemics. So it seems that the world stopped and everything was closed. And this affected, of course, our community as everything else in the world. So here is the campus of Foz do Iguaçu. For those who have been here, it's a very nice area, full of green. And here is the Tertuliarium. At the time, we had presential events and tertulias. And of course, now we have the empty Tertuliarium, but we hope soon these activities will be restarted and we have presential events here. Nevertheless, although the Tertuliarium and other places are not open, we still have the laboratories, okay? So people here have the chance to make experiments in the laboratory. So just to summarize what we have today, 2021, the international conscientiological cosmoethic community, we have 25 CIs, consciential-centric institutions. We have 11 pre-CIs, and the encyclopedia has more than 5,600 entries with more than 700 authors. And we have the well-established Cognopolis Foz do Iguaçu and 4 other pre-Cognopolis, let's say, at an embryonic phase, one in Pedra Azul, Domingos Martins, another one in Rosa dos Ventos, and another one in Rio, Saquarema, and in Florianópolis, Orthocognitivos. So let's talk now about these strong traits of intermissivists. This is interesting because these 10 strong traits Valtveer talks about are actually part of this test of the intermissivist. This is in the 700 Conscientiology experiments and also in the Verbet intermissive course. So he talks about these 10 strong traits, and the idea here is to analyze ourselves and to see if we have these strong traits or how they manifest in our consciousness. So the first one is self-confidence, this sense of no mortifying doubts. We know we are very confident about this life, and we have self-awareness. So this sense of immortality. We have the third one is about prioritization. So the value for this human life. So to make the best use or the best benefit from this intraphysical life after an intermissive course. The sense of CEAEC, or the understanding about the theory of CEAEC, which is this existential seriality, multiple lives, and this hyperacuity, these innate ideas. This is very common. We see among the intermissivists these ideas that we should do something from a very early age. So about our profession, about the things, or about the places we should go and the projects we should develop. The sixth one is the self-motivation. So this energetic development to do things in the best way we can. And of course, the parapsychist. We know that we still have a long way to develop parapsychism, but we can experience phenomena and we can understand the useful of this development for interassistance. And we can practice many techniques, including Penta. We have this sense of proexis. We know that we have a project to develop, a plan to develop in this intraphysical life. And self-retrocognition, sometimes not very lucid, not very clear, but we we the help from our helpers to promote these self-retrocognitions at the time we need them or we can understand them. And the number 10 is this omni interaction. In other words, the interaction with all elements of the cosmos. So, and this point is where I'm more interested to, in terms of these hominal interrelationships, interconsensual links and interactions.
So, Lygia,
yes,
very interesting, strong traits here. But I think that we have a comment here, question from Melanie that it's really interesting, okay? Is about this, about the timeline. Okay, so she is just bringing to us the following idea. Can it be that if you are the first consciousness of your group to arrive in Conscientiology in a given space country, that it is part of your proex to receive the group that is coming after you?
Yes, no doubt about it, Melanie. I think the first ones have a big responsibility in terms of receiving our colleagues. And I would not say just at the intraphysical dimension. I would say that we should open our responsibility in terms of extraphysical work. So if you, for example, develop your parapsychism, develop your lucid projectability, you can perhaps help in this interassistance, even by rescue people from your group left behind. Because the idea here, I think it's important to mention that we are not the choose ones, of course. So the intermissivists are not getting the chance to attend an intermissive course just because of the color of your eyes or something like that. It's actually self-efforts. And probably it has to do with merit. And probably we had to leave many people from our group behind. So we as lucid intermissivists, we have this responsibility to help the people we are connected to. So I would say that, of course, the first ones have a huge responsibility, and we have we have to open the ways for more people to come and to help them.
Yeah,
okay,
so
I see that
she's making the comment. So instead of finding your group, it is building conditions for your group to arrive.
Yes, sure. So, and this is very personal, I would say. So everyone has his or her own responsibilities in terms of this holobiographical trajectory. Yeah. So talking about proxemics and chronemics, I would bring some questions at the end for our reflection, but the place where we are and the groups we are interacting to are very important, and they indicate a lot from our past and a lot from the groups we should assist or we are able to assist. Okay, but I agree with you. It's not a question to find your group, but to find yourself to help the others to find you also.
Yeah, towards the end of the presentation, I'm going to expand a little bit and present this question from Melanie in a different way, in a different perspective. But let's go back to the presentation now.
Okay, so let's continue. Yeah, here this is just a hypothesis. You know this evolutionary scale. This is from Valdo Vieira, also from the Homo sapiens reurbanizatus. And in this scale, he presents like different levels from the transmigrated Conscientiology to the Serenissimus, which is the model with 100% of evolution. And after the Homo sapiens, after the Serenissimus, we will have the free conscience. So it's a crescendo of evolutionary levels, let's say. So the idea here is to imagine or to hypothesize who would be the students of an intermissive course. And here we suggest that it's from the vulgar pre-Serenissimus, with 25% of the Serenissimus, up to the lucid epicum, 35%. And then the next question would be, and who are the instructors? So we hypothesize that from the conscious projector to the evolutionologist. As we said at the beginning, by the definition, the intermissive course is organized in a way to attend the different needs of the consciousnesses. So we have different levels, different subjects and disciplines. So this is just a suggestion about, and of course, just for this presentation, but to make us think about the role of each of these consciousness and each level in this scale. And then we have the Serenissimus as the superintendent, and in a more cosmophysiological way, the free conscience. So this is actually not one idea I had, but I adapted this from a colleague of us, from William Klein. The next. He presented something like that in a meeting 10 years ago. So I'm trying to rescue some of these reflections he did bring during one meeting or congress of intermissivists, and of course from Vieira. So just to give one example about myself. So he is the guinea pig again. And I start by this time, here and now. This is a very important point, I think, because what we have today, the realities we face today, are actually resultant from our previous trajectory. So, for example, in my case, I was born in Brazil. I lived in Scotland, I lived in Argentina, in Germany, and now I'm back in Brazil. And this network of connections I have reveals in a very concrete way my past. So the family I was born, my profession, the people I interacted to, the places where I have been or I lived, the countries, different countries and different cultures. So my suggestion for those who want to start something about this para-historiographical self-localization, this is what I'm calling here in a general term, is to start with the present life, because it's where we have more concrete indications and more concrete realities about ourselves. So I started by considering myself an intermissivist. So before I was born here, I attended an intermissive course. And all this analysis of all these links and people and holothoscenes I have been involved in this life gave me many indications, and also I had facts and para-facts indicating, for example, one previous life in a context of a medical science in Germany. So I have many things, affinities and indications that I was probably part of this group in the 19th century. So I place here one personality, Paul Ehrlich, who was a scientist and with whom I have many interests in common. So he is one personality I'm studying right now about one possible or potential previous life in Germany. And then going back on this line, I have another time. I did not spend much effort. I did not concentrate much effort studying, but it's the Enlightenment. So particularly regarding writing. So this was the time in Britain when the first publications came or appeared. And the first one was this philosophical transactions of the Royal Society of London. And I have one hypothesis to be part of this context. Going even before that, I have a strong indications or affinities also from my research to be involved, to have been involved in this Protestant Reformation. And he is one example of one personality I also studied, Argula from Grunberg, also in Germany, in the 16th century. So these are just a small summary of what I have been doing. Of course, for each of these times and places, I have many other personalities, but this is just an illustration how I'm doing the research. And then going back in the 15th century is the printing process, the printing press from Gutenberg, especially because of pamphlets. So this is also one hypothesis, but you see that the more we go back on time, the less chances we have to find more accurate information. This is a problem. So going even before that, I have also some research on some personalities in the 12th century related to religion and also writing. One is Gerhard from Landsberg and the other one is Hildegard from Bingen, also in this context of the Roman-German Empire. And of course, I cannot deny my origin from the Celtic civilization. So even from my name, I have one hypothesis that probably I have a lot to do with these people, the Lygians, and this was long ago. And this was the area where we have Poland today. So these are just some summary of what I have been doing. And you can see or you can imagine that every point of this line requires a lot of research and a lot of energy and time. So I think it's very intelligent to select some things which are more evident in your life today to focus in your research. So the important point is to identify these holothoscenes. So for example, I see that one important root for me and probably for most of us is this Delicism and religion, apart from other things. So as we go back on time, it's more, the research becomes more generalist, if I can say that, you know. So I have more indications from the more recent life related to this one. So I would like to bring one question for us to reflect, which is focused on here and now. So my question is, have you already reflected on the proexological and evolutionary consequences arising from proxemic and chronemic aspects of this intraphysical life? And I think this is a very important question to think about, because actually this is what we have in our hands. So, and I always say that we have this concept of critical retro life, which was probably some 100 years ago, 400 or 500 years ago. But I always consider that this life now is a very critical one, because it's the life we are lucid, and we have all these knowledge or theories from the intermissive course. And we know that we are here to do something, and we can make a big difference in terms of our evolution. So Valdo always said this, for many people, this present life can correspond to 15 lives in the past. In other words, we had thousands of lives in which we have been not aware about our condition, our evolution, and we had this turning point, which was the intermissive course, making it possible to give another direction, or to accelerate our evolution. So I just would like to bring this question for our reflection. And the next, please. So many times we face different ways in life. And I think this is very important to consider these proxemic and chronemic aspects or influence in our life. So I would bring this final sentence before we open for the debate, which is being aware of the importance of cosmoetical theories. Theories is theory and practice of proxemics and chronemics at all evolutionary moments is the starting point for optimizing and boosting recycling, self-evolution, personal and group praxis of lucid intermissivists. And this brings us this idea about our responsibility, because we are not talking about just our self-evolution, but group evolution. So the more I advance, the more I invest in my evolution, the better I can help other intermissivists to improve themselves. This is the idea behind it. So I think now we can open for the debate.
Yes, Lygia, thanks very much for your presentation. It was wonderful. Okay, I think that this topic about chronemic and proximity, it's really interesting considering this scenario when you got all these international interrelationships that we have, and this would be, I think that the first comment or question that I would like to make is that from the previous question from Melanie about the importance of like you being from the first group that kind of preparing, building the space and the conditions for future groups. How do you see the movement of intermissivists from one country to the other, and these implications on preparing that Holocene, that environment for future intermissivists in that second, third country?
Well, this is a very complex question, and I can say a bit about my experience and my way, okay? Because talking about this, finding the group, I found the group quite late in my life. Yeah, if you remember, I said that I did hear about Conscientiology for the first time in 2017, in August. So it's 4 years ago only. And I always think about this. If I had found these concepts about Conscientiology much early in my life would be totally another another way. But look, this is my reality. So what I have now is I found a group. I'm very happy to found the group. And now I'm trying to do the best I can to accelerate my evolution. And if I look behind, I moved country sometimes in my life, mostly because of my work. I started working here in Brazil, and then I did my PhD in Scotland, and then I did a postdoc in Argentina, and then I went to Germany because of my work, to do some work at the university. So this was like an intuitive movement. I did not know anything about my proaxis at that time. I did not know I was an intermissivist, but of course I was already an intermissivist. So I think we have to consider, there is a very good verbet from Mauro Ballona talking about these comparative proexological aspects before you know you are an intermissivist and after you know you are an intermissivist. And I suppose that we have help from many consciousnesses when we are not aware about this. So in my case, I consider that all these movements I made allowed me to re-encounter many groups from my past, allowed me to qualify myself for the things I'm doing now. You know, and I would say that it was not an easy decision to move from Germany to Brazil. Of course, there are many things I like very much in Germany, but I reflected about this question I placed at the end. Where can I be more interassistantial? I have to think about the proaxis in a more open way, let's say. So I have to consider my ego proaxis, the things I have to do for myself to improve my interconscientiality. I have to think about the group karmic proaxis, the people I'm interacting with, and my family, my friends, and so on. And then we have to think about how can I help with a more, let's say, starting even a polykarmic stage by writing a book. So now for me, it's very clear that I'm at the finishing of my proaxis, or the finishing stage. Actually, I'm beginning the finish of my proaxis, and I have to make the best use of this time, you know. So one important aspect for me is to write a book. I don't want to decimate without writing a conscientiological book, yeah. And also, I considered things, for example, developing my parapsychism. I cannot close my eyes to the facilities offered here in Ecogenopolis. Yeah. So, in other words, Melanie, I think it depends very much on the stage of your life. If you are still at the first phase of your proaxis, which is structuring your life and organizing the things to go to the second stage of your proaxis, which is the work itself, to develop things and to create your own achievements. Or if you are finishing or closing up your life, you know. I'm not saying that I'm going to die in the next 5 years, but of course, I cannot see my life the same way I saw it when I was 30 years old or 35 years old. So this aspect about the place where you are, I think you have to consider all aspects of your proexis, your needs to evolve, and where can you be more assistential, interassistantial to yourself and to others.
Yeah, and Melanie is commenting here that I'm moving back to my home country in 3 weeks after 10 years in Finland. This topic is so relevant and important right now. It's unbelievable. Okay, so I think
Thank you, Melanie, and I'm very happy, and I wish you all the best.
Yeah.
All the best.
And then I think that another question here from Melanie, it's really, I think that's a common subject for a lot of people. How to be aware of the importance of proxemics and chronemics without being anxious about it, afraid to be too slow or to miss an important moment, to not meet other intermissivists?
Well, I think this also has to do with the age. I used to be much more anxious than I'm now with 62. And I think you have to work on this anxiety to see things done very quickly. Evolution doesn't make jumps. Evolution is always going on. And I would suggest you to pay attention to very small things, small details. Normally, we try to understand that what makes difference in our lives are the big steps, are the big decisions. But normally, we don't pay attention to the small things. For example, one thing that helps me a lot is to pay attention to synchronicities. You know, sometimes when I'm really not sure about something or about one decision, can be a small decision. If I pay attention to details, I see indications for things I'm doing. So pay attention to your synchronicities, to the people you meet, to the people you talk to. And of course, self-research is a key subject. You know, I was talking to Marcelo before we started. We were talking about volunteering work. And I think this is also a bit of our problem nowadays. We have so many demands. We have so many things to do, but we have to stop and look what is important at this very moment. Not to think about the future. We don't know what will be there, you know. So I would say that here and now is the most important things, the most important aspect, to concentrate all your efforts and your intentionality to focus on the here and now. If I'm now here, what can I do in this very moment? How can I be more interassistantial to me and to others? So make good use of your location, of your time. And every time we make this kind of movements to change country or even to change house, you will face new situations. And this is normally very positive. And I think when we are on the right direction, we feel this condition of very comfortable with our activities, you know. So if you are really uncomfortable with something, it's an indication to research and to look what's going on. This sense of proexis is something really interesting. There is a debate about it also. So once you go into this flow, it's like you are in the flow of the universe, in the flow of the cosmos. And everything comes to you in the right moment, in the right place. No matter where we are, but this very moment, if you are there, try to make the best as possible.
Cool. And Lygia, we have also a question here from Malo Lindemann. So
Yeah.
she's asking, Lygia, I would like to know if during all these years that you are away from the group, if you already had affinity with all these ideas.
Well, yes, I had affinity with these ideas, and I think it's very natural for most intermissivists until we find really this line of research. In my case, was about science. I spent some time with spiritists. Well, I was born in a Catholic family. I attended a Catholic church until teenager, and then I decided, no, this is not for me. I don't like this. And then I went to Spiritism. Also, I realized this is not for me. But I was always with this idea there will be somebody somewhere I can talk to, and I can share these ideas about multidimensionality, multiseriality, and all these things. So I was always connected with these ideas, but I did not know how to manage them. At one point, I came to the conclusion that I was totally crazy, and I thought, well, these worries I have don't make sense. I should forget about them. Until I found Conscientiology, and then things started to make sense to me, because this was a science. And I think it's important to mention one thing. We have well, I suppose, no? For us, we have some code words, some, not the retro code, the personal retro code, but there are words making this link. And I think this comes from the intermissive course. So I remember when I was very young, I think 22, I did hear about projectiology. I did buy one magazine talking about out-of-body experiences. And I read about it and I thought, well, these people are crazy. So this did not touch me at that moment. But when I did listen to the word conscientiology, this was like a code for me, a password, And I went and I started to read and to start, and I could not believe that this was making so much sense, So you have to find out where and how you find this, just to touch you at some point. Well, can be a word, can be a concept, can be a parapsychic phenomena. I think it will work in different ways for different people,
Yeah, it'll be different, this password for each person. Like for me, it was exactly out-of-body experience. That was what first called my attention. Then later that it came to Conscientiology.
Yeah, many people access Conscientiology through IIPC, which is the institution dealing with lucid projection. So I think that this was probably the reason Valdo Vieira did bring the first publication was about it, the phenomenon. And for other people is something else. So for me, it was this scientific aspect of Conscientiology, the principle of disbelief. This called my attention immediately. And also the encyclopedia. When I saw this verbet, the template of a verbet, this was really something touching me. And I understood, well, I have to write this. I have to start writing because I'm able to,
Yeah, Melanie is just commenting here. My password was out-of-body experience too. That's how I found the Conscientiology courses. Yeah, that's for a lot of us, a lot of people,
Yeah.
some of us had the same path. And Lygia, one curiosity that I need to comment here, and I think it just remind me when I saw your hypothesis of your seriological timeline,
Yeah.
and I was watching for the different German personalities, because I remember the first time that I met you, and for a long period of time, I thought, oh, Lygia, well, she speaks Portuguese so well. Because well, just to explain to people that watching, okay, we were met in a group that in like some web conferences that were done in Portuguese, and I was watching Lygia, and I thought that she was a German that speaks excellent Portuguese. I didn't know that she was Brazilian at that time. I think that there is some aspects that were kind of from this possibility, hypothesis of past lives that are kind of impregnating yourself.
Yeah, no, I think we actually we have this in our psychosphere. You know, our past um, our past lives, and we manifest in a way we used to manifest before. And just to talk about these moving countries, I think this is very common for, especially for a group of intermissivists. I see this in our group. The volunteers for ISIC are people with experiences in different countries and different cultures and languages. So I think we have these needs more than affinity. We need to get this reconnection to help ourselves and to help others. This is interassistance, you know. So if you think about your preferences and the things you do in a very easy way, this indicates things from your past, of course. And I know that Melanie is also one of these kind of intermissivists. She has traveled a lot, although she's quite young, much younger than me.
Yeah, and then we have a thank you note here from Nilsa Magalhães Schmidt for you, Lygia. Okay, Nilsa is saying, Lygia, thanks for all our conversations and the first questions, seeds of this topic, and to allow me to learn from your exemplarism and of determination, perseverance, and execution during this process. Congratulations.
Thank you, Nilsa. Nilsa is a friend. She lives in Munich, and she was part of some of this research I did there, visiting some places and collect some data. So thank you very much, Nilsa, to be here.
Yeah. And then.
So we go back to the presentation.
Yep.
Okay, so I just want to bring this citation from Valdo Vieira, from the 700 Conscientiology experiments. He says, intraphysically, we live in a constant and unavoidable evolutionary interdependence, group karmic inseparability. So I like this very much, because no matter where we are, in which country, in which culture, we have links, we have bonds with many different groups. And this shows the intelligence of this process of evolution. That's why we say that we evolve in groups. It's not possible to evolve alone. If I decide, okay, I want to evolve and I will go to the top of the Everest and only meditate and think and reflect, this is not the same. Evolution requires movement and interactions between people, and of course not only people. I'm just focusing on hominal level, but we can expand this to all elements of the cosmos. We interact with many kinds of different energies, from the pre-human beings and from nature, from fetal energy and water and wind and all kind of immanent energies. So I like it very much to think about this interdependency. I think we are really interdependent in this planet, on this planet. It's not possible to evolve alone. So the more bonds, the more links we make, the faster or better way we can evolve. And of course, thinking about this stage of the proaxis, I'm now more worried or focusing on this stage of pre-intermissiology, which is the time before the next intermission. So the next time I will be at the extra-physical dimension, well, me and all of us, we will have this responsibility to be leaders, but in a cosmoethical way, and helping the groups we left behind. Yeah, so I think this is a very important concept about the group karmic inseparability. So I just want to bring here some references I used to prepare this presentation. Of course, the book from Tatiana Mota, which is available in English, and you can buy it from Amazon by print on demand. I really recommend, because it's a wonderful book, and she makes, for each of those strong traits I presented, these 10, she makes one specific chapter. And at the end of the chapter, she brings 3 questions. So it's a very good and very nice to start this topic about intermissive course. And there is another book in English about Zephyrus from Abel Telles, The Intermissive Para-Identity of Valdo Vieira, which I also recommend. And of course, the treatises, Homo sapiens Reurbanizatus and Pacificus, Projectiology, and 700 conscientiology experiments, and the glossary I mentioned before. And there are some verbets I really recommend you to read, the intermissive course. Of course, they are in Portuguese, but I hope very soon we will have some translations of verbets available. We have, currently, we have 2 verbets translated at the website of Encyclosapiens. So you can access these 2, but they are not here. So intermissive course, time of intermissive course is a very important verbet. Evolutionary spreadsheet, change intermission, talking about this intermission we attended, the intermissive course, localization, mega clarity task, decisive detail, which I also like very much, and the verbet I mentioned about Proxemics and Chronemics, Binomial. And I just want to inform you that part of the things I presented here will be in a publication very soon, an article from Interparadigmas, and another one, the second article, is going to be released during the International Week in a new journal, International Journal of Conscientiology, when I talk about friendship, international conscientiological friendship. So I would like to thank you very much for this time and your comments and your presence. And talking about interconnections, I would like to invite you for our next event, which is the 3rd International Week of Conscientiology. This will be in August from 20 to 29. It will be 10 days of online activities, many courses, and very interesting programs. So we are really working on this to provide the best we can in terms of internationalization of conscientiology. So please join us. because this event will be really good.
Yep.
And one important information, the event will be in English, but we will have simultaneous translation to Portuguese and Spanish. So we
Perfect.
hope to see you there.
That would be my point. The translation.
Sorry. Sorry, but we are working together. We are volunteers of ISIC, and I really thank you very much, Marcelo, for this opportunity and to mediate this.
Well,
Thank you.
Lygia, it was a wonderful presentation. I would like to thank you for joining us and making one more piece of all this interconnection that we have of proximity and chronemity, okay, that we have among our intermissivists that we have around, okay. So it was very good to have you here. Thanks. And I would like to invite you all for the next two events. October 3rd, the Bridge Researchers will be an event in Spanish with Mariana Nieto from Argentina. And December 4th, I'm going to do the event in English. That will be my verbet that I did, that it's about consensual-centric welcoming. That's will be interesting too. Okay, so you are all invited for this next event. And thank you all. Have a wonderful Sunday.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Lygia.
Bye-bye.
Bye.